Yay! We did it.
Are we live?
We are live.
Oh, sweet.
Welcome to this very close proximity edition
Yes.
of Unmute Yourself.
It's getting real cozy in here.
It's maybe too cozy, some might say.
Yeah.
But we are having technical issues that have reduced us to just one computer on today's stream.
The internet is drunk.
The internet is not our fault. We are sober and the internet is drunk for once, which is pretty backwards. Let me click some things here. Make sure everything's all set up right. But yeah, we wanted to kind of get the community together, as we are wont to do from time to time, and talk about some of the changes to our reviews and how we do them.
Yeah. So if you guys have questions, throw them in the screen.
Throw them, but write them on a small sheet of paper.
Yes.
Ball it up and throw it.
Then scan it and then send the image to the chat.
Yes. Actually, we do have some questions already, believe it or not, from our lovely internet homies.
Yay!
Oh, computers. So here's a question from Samuel Damasio that is very apt. He asks, can you talk about how the new review system came about, and how are you already looking at tweaks as that was its first showing? Oh, like, are we looking at changing it after that? So, for those who don't know, we just did our first new review in our new system yesterday. It was or was it Tuesday? It was Tuesday.
It was Tuesday.
Your transistor review.
Yes. We've gotten rid of the score. Just as a reminder for people who may have recently started watching our channel, when Rev3 Games first started out, we did not have review scores then either.
That's true.
We operated under a try it, buy it, skip it system, which I actually really liked. And then about a year later, when Adam came on, he suggested that we do the scoring system.
Which, in fairness, was essentially the same thing, right? I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 out of 5 all kind of correspond, if you think about it, to buy it, try it, skip it.
It's like a 3-star rating system. I was never personally a fan of any kind of numerical rating system because I feel it devalues the content of the actual review.
Yeah.
And anecdotally, I have noticed that the comments on reviews that do have scores on them tend to be very argumentative and focus solely on the actual score of the review, which I don't like. And personally, I think that abiding by review scores, which a lot of outlets feel like they have to do, is kind of a dangerous thing to get into.
I think one thing that we learned from Adam that I'm really grateful for is that he went out. I don't know if it was ever by choice but I know that he was pretty adamant about us not being on Metacritic, because he, and I feel the same way, felt some discomfort about how that affects people's jobs and careers and salaries and lives. Like, that is a really weird, gross system, and it puts even further emphasis on this number that I think should never have been more than a suggestion in the first place.
Yeah. And just from the comments that I've read on the Transistor review, people seem to be responding really positively. There have been a couple people who are like, oh, I need a score to decide how I feel about this. But the thing is, you don't. You might think you do, but you don't need a score to decide how you feel about a game if you just listen to somebody talk about each and every detail of it for 8 minutes. I'm really, really glad that we are not doing it anymore. I hope people agree. As far as tweaks to the current system, we are, of course, open to suggestions.
Yeah, for sure.
But consider the fact that we came up with that new review system in a day.
Basically,
and one of our editors just whipped it together in an hour, and it was actually kind of incredible how he managed to do that. And it's probably come as close to my vision of what our review scale should be, closer than I ever thought possible.
Yeah, it came out so well. But we're also like, that even on a superficial level, there are just visual tweaks to the way that we represent that final screen. So I think, and for people who don't know, the way the review system works now is that instead of a score at the end, we have one final sentence, one sort of summary sentence, kind of the way we always have, that sort of summarizes how we feel about the game. And we have that pop up on screen, and we demonstrate that for you visually. And it's funny because I think we're not actually changing the review system that much. Like, the first 95% of the review is the same way it always is. The whole thing is actually, we just don't tack a number on it.
We've just replaced the score with a sentence that I feel gives a better description of the game than something completely arbitrary. Because, I mean, a score at the end of the game doesn't tell you anything about the actual features of the game or what you might like or dislike. Whereas a sentence, I feel, is a good way of summarizing as best you can what the game is about.
Jaden Cornish on Google Plus asks, did you remove the scores from your system to focus more on what makes the game good or bad instead of just trying to justify a score? Which I think is that's partially true. I mean, like, having to build your entire text around justifying a number or vice versa is not... It seems counter to actually doing what we want to do, which is to talk thoughtfully about games and talk intelligently about games.
A good example would be my Dead Space review, because I really like that game, and I gave it a 5 out of 5, even though I don't think it was like a perfect game. I feel like it was closer to a 5 than it was to a 4. But people, like, when you have a review scale like that, there are so many things you have to consider. Like, is it a uniform distribution? Is it more of a bell curve? And these are things that you're not going to necessarily include or explain in every single review that you do. So random people who happen to be Googling, for like Dead Space review and just found our review of it might not know the intricacies of our review scale. A lot of people probably assume, because most outlets operate on a 10-point review scale, that our review scale has half stars in it, which in fact it doesn't. It doesn't. So a 5, there's going to be more 5s than other 10-point review scales, because there's only half as many options for what you can actually score a game.
It's funny, and even still, like, what a 5 means to us might not be the same as a 5 for another outlet. What a 5 means to me might not be the same thing as what it means to you.
Exactly.
And there's this sort of false pretense that these scores on different games at different outlets can be fairly compared and grouped together, and I just don't think that's true.
Yeah, I also found myself a lot, and Dead Space is another good example of this, feeling like I was shoehorned into giving a game a score that I didn't feel it deserved. Not to say I didn't feel Dead Space deserved a 5, because with our scoring system, I absolutely feel it did. But I also feel like there's very little room outside of those very specific numbers to be able to give any information about the game. So Tomb Raider, which I gave a 3, which I actually felt was more of a 3.5, all people see is the 3, and even though I explained that it's kind of a high 3, it doesn't matter. People just still focus on the number that you've given it. So I've never been a fan of the review scale, but I've especially never been a fan of the 5-point review scale. And I could not be happier that it's gone.
Yeah. I feel the same way. I think that I had a sort of similar experience with my South Park review, where I tried to explain, and I think I did explain very, very thoughtfully, that, like, this game is really cool, but it's not for everyone. It does some amazing things right. A very certain subset of people are going to love this game, but it also has some issues. And, of course, the people who type South Park into YouTube search and click on the first result get angry because of the number at the end and forget about literally the 1,000 words I said that came out of that number.
Yep.
Hold on, I had a YouTube comment that I wanted to pull up from Will Wiggins here. He says, again, super glad you guys did away with the review scores. I've been advocating it for a while now, and seeing that there's demand for it in the industry is a glimmer. Oh, this is so nice. Seeing there's demand for it in the industry is a glimmer of hope that we can start really focusing on what's important instead of one game getting a 9.4 and another getting a 9.5. Arbitrary nonsense, I say. And then he said he might try to join, which would be cool. But
yeah, thank you very much. I feel exactly the same way, and I especially think it's ridiculous when outlets and websites do such granular review scores. Like, it's one thing to have a 10-point scale. Nobody needs a 100-point scale.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
It's just, it feeds into this insight. Like, one thing that I constantly see people get angry about on the internet is like, oh, IGN gave God Hand like a 4.3, which is the same score they gave to this Barbie horse event, and it's like, dude, that's not the point. Like, that's not why those numbers exist. And I think it makes me feel good. Like the Transistor review, the comments for the most part are discussions of like how people felt about the game, and
it's the nicest comment section of a video I've done in years, probably.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like outlets that set themselves up with review scales like that are just setting themselves up for failure.
Yeah, it's or at the very least, they're setting themselves up for some really trollish, shitty comments that I don't think are a positive force for the industry.
Yeah.
So we are gonna let some people in. Just so you know, we have to run and shoot Casual Friday actually right after this, so we're gonna be keeping this shorter than I think our normal hangouts, but we can we can work something out and do a full length one next week. I think. Let's talk to this dude Jack down here.
I think your computer's muted.
Oh, okay.
Everybody on the internet is
All right,
like,
can you hear me?
Give me 8 seconds, and all right, there we go. Hi, Jack.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Beauty. You'll have to forgive me if I'm a bit slow. It's 8 in the morning and I'm not exactly well. Yeah, I'm in Australia, so hey. About your review scale, the way that you're reviewing, obviously, it's changed a lot, and you make the point of overall thoughts on a game. It's a lot easier just to have that summarizing sentence at the end. But games aren't cheap. Like, for a lot of people out there, like, they're not the cheapest thing out there, and it's a lot easier, I think, at a glance to look at a 5-point. Obviously, like you said, the 10-point and the, in particular, 100-point review scales are very granular and mostly useless. But, ooh, can you kids hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, all right. Sorry, my headset's not the best thing out there. At a glance, it's a lot easier to look at a 5-point scale and be like, okay, so this would be worth my money at the end of a review, obviously after watching the whole thing.
Yeah.
Do you think that it's still not worth having that there?
So that's a really good point, actually, is that, and it's something we kind of inherited from Adam, was Adam never, and I think he spoke about this on Sus or something sometimes, he never thought of reviews primarily as purchasing advice. He thought of them as criticizing an art form. But to me, I think it still works as purchasing advice even without the number.
Yeah.
Because I think if you watch the video, if we're doing our jobs right, you will get a sense of whether or not this is the right game for you. I mean, like, to put a number on, I mean, I feel like people can listen to us and hear the adjectives we're using and tell if they're good adjectives or bad adjectives. You know what I mean? Like, I trust our audience, I think, a little bit, and that's part of this experiment, I guess. But I think that our audience can make an informed decision based on knowing what we like and don't like, and how we describe our experience with a particular game without giving them a number to wrestle with, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, I totally get that games are expensive, and I feel like that actually proves even more that having a review score isn't necessary, because if you're paying a lot of money for a game, you're going to want to hear every detail about it so you can make sure that it's something that you really want to buy. Mm-hmm. Whereas a review scale or a score at the end, I mean, you could just go to Metacritic, and if scores were really important to you, then you could use that as an even better barometer by which to judge whether you're not or not you should buy the game, because then you're getting 10 review scores. So you could maybe take that into consideration with the content of an actual review that you like. Obviously, I'm not suggesting that you go, like, eschew all of our reviews and just go to Metacritic for all of your purchasing information. But I do feel like there is merit in both. I do think that certain websites work with review scores, especially websites that tend to do less in-depth reviews. But I feel like as far as money goes, a score shouldn't really matter. But then again, I mean, it probably does to some people.
I mean, I also think that, like, the number is also, it's weird because if you're rating games as value propositions and not as pieces of creative work, you run into the issue of, like, how much a game is worth in terms of price, and, like, what does a game's value change? Does its score change after a price drop? Does its score change after they patch everything that was shitty about it? Like, I see other outlets wrestle with that problem all the time, and I feel like these are all problems that are symptomatic of holding on to review scores as something necessary. Mm-hmm. And it's a weird experiment, and I'm going to be curious to see how people continue to react as we do these reviews on somewhat larger games like Watch Dogs. But for the most part, I feel like after doing this for a couple of years, I would like to think that we have a really good grasp of what our audience likes and what they value about us as an outlet. And the thing I keep hearing people say is that they like review games because we hopefully provide, like, a sort of intelligent, thoughtful, like, fanboyish angle on things if we're doing this right. And so, yeah, but that is a great point, and it's something that we thought about when we were making this decision. But thank you. Feel free to hang out. I'm going to pull in some more folks, try to get as many people in as possible. Let's talk to Tevya here. Hey, you're gonna have to unmute yourself with a little.
Hello?
Hey, what's up?
Hey, what's up? Oh, sir. Sorry about that.
Blue room.
Technical issues. Cool question, guys. I'm just wondering. Speaking of games, Joe, one game really did tick me out with Mass Effect 3 ending. And I know it's an old topic, but hear me out. What do you guys want Mass Effect 3 entire game, and extended cut? Because my bad, I think the extended cut it's still bad, in my opinion.
Can you repeat that again? Was it about Mass Effect?
Yeah, but the one that's trilogy as a whole. Just wondering.
Yeah, Mass Effect 3 is not something I've really thought about in a while. It feels like we're reaching a time where we have to be hearing about a new Mass Effect game soon. Like, we have to. It just feels like we know that it's one of those things where, like, one of those things like Fallout 4 where we all feel certain that there has to be something in development, we just haven't really seen it yet. There have been a sort of tacit admissions that they've been doing new Mass Effect stuff from some of the creators on Twitter and stuff, but nothing firm. But
yeah.
I would be super down. There's also rumors that they're doing a Mass Effect trilogy, like EP compilation for next gen consoles, and I don't know, is that something we'd be interested in? Would you play?
Yeah, I would.
80 hours of Mass Effect
absolutely,
again?
I would.
That makes sense. When you think about it, because knowing EA, the plea, so call them a Magic 4 in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I mean, I've been hearing a lot of people say that they don't think there's going to be another Mass Effect just because they sort of wrapped up the story. And given the public response to the ending of the trilogy, I wouldn't be surprised if they were kind of just like, you know what, we're done here. Like, let's move on to something else.
Yeah, I think it'd be nice to start fresh, right?
Yeah, it would be nice to start fresh, but it's also such a involved and full universe that I feel like it would be kind of a waste to just abandon it at this point. Yeah. I'd love to see them try something different with it, like something really different in the same universe, but maybe different mechanics.
Yeah.
Different characters. I feel like there's still a lot to be done.
There's a lot to be mined there. I think what I love about Mass Effect isn't the specific characters who we saw in Mass Effect 2 and 3, although they were great, but it's the universe, and I think what I would want from a sequel, if I could pick one thing, would be a non-human protagonist. I feel like we've already explored the human perspective on the Mass Effect universe, and I want to see, like, an Asari or something else.
It'd be awesome if you could just choose, you know?
Yeah.
Like, it's almost like...
Yeah, that'd be really cool. But yeah, thank you for your question. We're gonna try to fit as many in as possible before we have to run in like a couple minutes here. But thanks.
You're welcome.
Let's see here. Let's talk to Chris. Oh, that didn't work. Wait, there he is. Oh, Google Hangouts. Hi, Chris.
Hey.
Hi.
There we go.
Oh,
Hi. What's up?
Hey.
Got me? All right. Well, I posted a question already. Wait, let me see if I can bring it up. Oh, it was, something about leaks. Okay. E3 is coming up soon, and there's already some leaks coming out, and like sort of Project Beast, which is leaked out to be maybe another Souls game, and like my opinion about it is like there's no way that these are just by accident. Somebody is like, working with them and thinking we got to get the word out about this project early so that we can get some early advertisement for their stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so here's the thing. That certainly does happen. There are certainly planned, like, calculated leaks. But the other thing about a lot of these pre-E3 leaks is that I think the Project Beast thing is probably real. The assets that we've seen are too polished and too specific to not be a real thing. But like, I don't know. I see other pre-E3 leaks, and I feel like a lot of them are really fake. Like that giant list that you see, that's like, here's everything that's going to be on stage at Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft's press conference. Like maybe I'll be proven wrong in a couple weeks, but I don't think there's one single human being who would even have access to a list. Like, why would they even make a list of what's going to be on everyone's stage? Nobody knows that yet. Like, there's not one human being on the planet who has the answers already. But B, like, I just don't think that there'd be a reason to take that information and put it on a sheet of paper and write NBA in the corner and call it a day. Like,
yeah.
I think people need to remain hyper skeptical about that stuff whenever possible.
Yeah, I think it's a lot. It's a lot easier to believe a leak if it's like a single game, and there's more specific information about it versus like, oh, this is everything that's going to be at E3, or this is everything that's on slate for this publisher this fall. I tend to take all of them with a grain of salt, just because when you start anticipating leaks and planning your content around them from a video perspective, it becomes dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
You can devote resources to things that end up being nothing at all,
Really
and then
exist.
if you say something about it on camera and it doesn't end up happening, you sound like an idiot.
Yeah. So,
And that already happens enough to me anyway. So, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I would take a lot of that stuff with a grain of salt, personally.
alrighty. I think we can fit in one more from another Chris. We've got back-to-back Chris's. Chris party.
Chris Hour.
Welcome to Chris, the Chris Cast.
Can you guys hear me?
Wow.
Yeah. Hey, what's up? We can hear you.
Hey, how you guys doing? I really like the changes that you guys made to the review system. Like, just pulling up that little paragraph real quick, like how you say, Tara said, Transistor will be remembered as an artistic achievement. I feel like that's an easier line of discussion, or you can have better dialogue arguing, yes, this is a good game, or yes, it's not a masterpiece. Like, I don't always agree with your guys' review, but it's a better, I feel like, a jumping point that rather than saying, hey, I don't agree, that's a 5. I don't agree, that's a 4. But I can say now that I agree that's a masterpiece, or I don't agree that's a masterpiece. And I feel like it's a better way of describing and better way of just putting your thoughts out there rather than just like a 5 or a 4.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. It is absolutely a better jumping off point for discussion than an arbitrary number.
Just because let's imagine you're somebody who's watched one of our reviews and you don't agree with your opinion on Transistor, for example. The comment that a person would leave on a review of Transistor they disagree with previously would be like, I don't think that this game is a blank out of 5, you're an idiot, this number's wrong. But when all they have to go off of is your final sentence,
then they actually have to form a legitimate argument.
Yeah, they have to engage you.
Yes, exactly.
That's our hope, at least. And so far, so good, I feel like.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, and I unbelievably, in a third Chris has joined us right at the end here. So we're going for a Chris hat trick. Let's get the third Chris. All Retro Games fans are named Chris, is what I learned here today. Let's see if we can get Chris to show up. Hi, Chris.
Hi,
I think
Chris.
you need to unmute yourself like the Chris's that came before you.
Hey.
Yes, you, that Chris. This
Okay.
Chris.
I'm from England, so do you think Nintendo will announce a new console at E3 this year? Since we heard all about the Fusion thing, or they're gonna wait until next year?
It's weird because Nintendo's come out and said point blank, we are having no hardware announcement. That was a formal statement from Nintendo directly, if I'm not mistaken. So I never want to say never because then a month from now I'll look like the idiot who said no. But
yeah, I could see. I mean, I definitely don't think they'll come out with a big console because it would just cannibalize everything on the Wii U.
Yeah,
and it would also completely destroy the public confidence in their product. Because what does it look like if they release a console that doesn't sell well and then they come out with another one 2 years later?
Remember when they apologized for the 3DS price drop? Imagine that times infinity if they just abandoned a system like this early in the life cycle.
And they just came out with they had the 3DS, then they had the 3DS XL, and then they came out with the 2DS.
Yeah.
So I could see them coming out with another handheld console, but I don't think it's going to be this year.
Yeah, I wonder almost if it's not going to be a new hardware thing in the traditional sense, like a new system that can play new games, but I think there is room, like the Fusion rumor that you mentioned. I think leave it to Nintendo to find a way to make a product that is maybe even more confusing than the Wii U and combines a console thing into a handheld thing, because that is, as silly as it sounds, a legitimately cool idea. There are enough superficial similarities between Wii U games and 3DS games in terms of having 2 screens and that whole thing that.
But the Wii U was supposed to solve that problem, remember?
And it super didn't. But I don't know. I love the idea of a new Nintendo piece of hardware because I love Nintendo obsessively, and we'll play almost anything they put out. But I don't know, man. They're in a weird spot, and I'm kind of curious to see how they handle it.
I'm super curious to see what kind of stuff they announce at Nintendo Direct this year, because it's always something a little bit shocking.
There's always a curveball, and that's what's so charming about them. Like it's, I don't know, it's easy to criticize them for the things that they do weird and wrong, but I also know that the first thing I'm going to do, if it were up to me when we get to E3, is go play Smash Bros.
Yeah.
Like I want to play Smash 4 so ridiculously bad. It's all I think about all the time. Maybe that's something else we should talk about is our E3 plans real quick.
Yeah.
We have them. We're
going to E3. We will have a smaller team this year, so you probably won't see quite as much content from us as you've seen in years past.
The team is me, Tara, and these 3 Chris's down here.
Yes.
3 Chris.
The trifecta. No, we've so far we're still building out our E3 appointment schedule right now. I'm finding that booking all of our E3 appointments is quite a daunting task.
Yeah,
it was previously handled by Zach, and now I've taken over it, and I'm like, what's going on? But so far, it's looking really good. We've got appointments for a lot of major games, I think, that people are going to be excited about. And then there's also stuff that is not announced yet that even we don't know about beforehand.
Unannounced game number 3 is an appointment that's on the schedule right now.
Yeah, I have 3 appointments right now for unannounced games, and I have no idea what they are. They could be awesome and they could suck. So half of E3 I feel is kind of like appointment booking, seeing things that you really want to see, and the other half is going around the show floor and finding stuff that looks really cool that you didn't know about before or that you've never played before, and just taking it from there.
Yeah, and that's the part that's most exciting to me is doing this like guerrilla game coverage where we run in there, the 2 of us basically, with like 2 shooters, and just find the stuff that's exciting to us and is buzzy to us and feels interesting, and like hunt it down and talk about it and play it. That's the E3 that I've kind of always wanted to do. So it's kind of a dream come true in a weird way.
It should be interesting this year. You guys are gonna see a very different kind of descent into madness than what you saw last year.
Right, exactly. But thank you guys so much for hanging out with us for this truncated hangout to talk about review scores and all sorts of shenanigans. We're gonna keep iterating on and sort of building up our new system and trying it out. We are also listening to all your feedback and reading every comment, even the shitty ones. So please keep telling us like what you genuinely think of this. We'll be trying it out again very shortly when Watch Dogs comes out, or not long after Watch Dogs comes out. And thanks for hanging out, you guys. That was fun.
Guys.
Thanks to Chris, John, and Chris. This one doesn't have a last name either. And
there's a Christian next to him.
Oh, we didn't even have time to get 4 Chris's.
I'm sorry, guys. We didn't get
Save that for the sequel.
Join us next week.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.